Hello, everybody. We're back again with author Kevin McAleer on our occasional literary chats. We've covered much of the great American literature from the 20th century, and we've recently delved into the 19th century with a little Mark Twain and Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer. And what else did we do? Anything else from the 19th century we did?
That's pretty much it, if you don't count Jack London, who began writing in the late 19th century. And we spoke about him in general, but we only started speaking about specific works in
Ah,
the 20th, I think 1900, 1901. So we just miss out on London in the late 19th.
okay. And so what Kevin decided was, as long as we're in that time period, why don't we do a book called The Virginian, which is considered apparently the first Western novel. Uh, and it's the prototypical Western novel in that respect. And, with cowboys and horses and cows and bulls, all that kind of stuff, out in Wyoming. So it covers a lot of the archetypes of the Western novel that would come later on. And apparently Teddy Roosevelt really favored this book himself. So Kevin thought, why don't we not only cover the Virginian, but just the Western genre in general, since that's an important genre of literature that we haven't covered yet. And all right, so let's jump right into it. Kevin, is this the first time you read the Virginian?
I had read it about 25 or 30 years ago, and I remember liking it, but I had completely forgotten it in the interim, which is no discredit to the book. It's just I'm getting older. So
Right.
a second read I thought wouldn't hurt, and here we are now.
Okay. And how did you like it the second time around?
I liked it. I wasn't crazy about it, but I liked it. And why not crazy about it? Because most of the books that I propose and that we end up talking about, uh, I give rave reviews to, and I think that you like most of them as well. The
Yeah.
only drawback to this is that it's slow. Okay. There's a lot of interiority for an action Western novel, or at least what you would ordinarily think of when you think of the Wild West. It's narrated. I don't even know what the narrator's name is, by the way. I neglected to note that. Excuse me. Maybe he is not named at all. That could well be. But he is someone from the East, uh, a tenderfoot, a dude, a greenhorn, and he has come out west. And this is, I think, somewhere in the 1880s or so, 1890s,
Hmm.
early 1890s. The book was published in 1902 and was based on Owen Wister, the author, Owen Wister's experiences as a tenderfoot from the East going out west, and in his case, to recover his health.
Okay.
Much as did his good friend from Harvard, you mentioned him already, and to whom the book is dedicated, Teddy Roosevelt. So he's following Teddy's footsteps because Teddy did the same thing. His wife had died very young in childbirth, I think it was, and he went out west to grieve, I think it was, to recover. And in Owen Wister's case, he had suffered a nervous breakdown, I think, and he had gone out to Wyoming to a ranch of a man whom his family knew, a wealthy rancher out there in 1885, I think. So that little digression brings us back to the narrator of the story, who is similar to Owen Wister, I think. And we get his telling over 300 pages in my edition about this figure known only as the Virginian. He does not have a name. He is only the Virginian, a cowpoke originally from Virginia, mid-20s when we first meet him, and he's an impressive figure. Long, tall, slow talking, slow walking, come in from stage right, Mr. Cooper. And he really is a prototypical Western hero as we have come to know them through films. I don't even have to describe him, I don't think, any further. Think Gary Cooper, think John Wayne. And he is a heroic figure because he does all these things that we have come to know through cowboy films. He takes on the cattle rustlers. He he's a capable man not only with his fists, but with his gun and with his lasso. He can do it all. And the book is basically following the career of this Virginian through the eyes of this Eastern tenderfoot. A subplot, which becomes a main plot, is the Virginians' romancing of the local school marm. Another template, right? So you have the wild and woolly, hyper masculine cowboy, and then you have this East Coast uh, school lady, more specifically from Bennington, Vermont, young, pretty, quite intelligent, obviously, she's a school teacher, but with a sharp tongue, an equally sharp mind. And she goes out west partly just to have an adventure, it seems, to break out of the mold that she has been living in as this sort of coddled bourgeois Easterner. And also because she has turned down the marriage proposal of a young man, and she wants to just make a clean break, it seems. Well, she starts a school out there in Wyoming. We're in Wyoming, as you say, yes. All the action pretty much takes place in Wyoming. And there is a courtship that is a very strong subplot to the entire novel, which will then dovetail into becoming the plot, the mainspring of the plot. In fact, in the last third of the book, which we can get to later. But that's essentially the setup.
We also have a prototypical villain there named Trancus, and he plays a key role throughout the novel as well.
Right. Uh, uh, you're thinking of the Canyon, Tim, I think. Uh, Trampus, not Trancus.
Oh,
It's
Krampus.
important it's important we get the name.
Yeah.
Um, and he is yes, the villain of our piece. He is the protagonist, if we want to have a male protagonist. The school mistress, her name is Molly Wood. Should have said that. So Molly is the female antagonist. Did I say protagonist for Trampus? I'm sorry. Our protagonist is the Virginian. Our two antagonists are Trampus, the man in the black hat, and Molly Wood, the female antagonist, the young innocent from out back east. So you have this nice little counterbalancing of the rivalry between Trampus and the Virginian, which we can get into a little bit, but it's just this ongoing sort of feud they have. and then the ongoing romance between Molly Wood and the Virginian, because she's a tough nut to crack. She's not going to just fall into his arms. She is a very independent woman. She comes from a very um, a family of suffragettes, going back to her great aunt, who is also a major sub-figure in the novel. And she's a very proud woman. So Mr. Virginian has his work cut out for him with Miss Wood. And again, as you say, with Trampas, who is a not only a meanie, but he's a clever and resourceful bad guy as well.
Okay, very good. So you said that the work is slow. What are some of the slower passages?
We don't need to punish our viewers with that. But it just, I found certain chapters in their entirety to be quite soporific. There was one called Emily, where he talks, the narrator, about this sort of spinster hen that doesn't lay any eggs of her own. So she's always going around trying to sit on whatever resembles or could possibly be construed as an egg. Uh, and like newly born puppies, she will go and sit on them. It's funny, but not for 15 or 20 pages. It's a paragraph. Thank you. What I found out though is that this chapter, Emily, had appeared as a separate story earlier in before the publication of The Virginian. So you can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to wedge it in.
Yeah.
And that's a great lesson to all you writers, or writers know this, but would-be writers, apprentice writers, don't sacrifice form for what you think is a priceless little episode or passage. It has to go. That's the old adage of kill your darlings. So this is one darling that Wister didn't see fit to kill. There are a couple others. So it's a bit bloated in my estimation. But that's my critique of every book, Tim. I'm Mr. Efficient prose, right? I like to move it. I like to go along. And if there's a digression, it's going to be short and sweet and pungent. But again, this is also a man born in 1860, so I'm sure he grew up reading Thackeray and Dickens and all the rest of those English authors in the canon. Although he pretends to be an American author, he talks about that in an essay that we can maybe address later on that I read, which was in my edition. Uh, he he's of that he's of the big baggy monster tradition of 19th century uh, novels. So I forgive him on that count. And because he also has an excellent character. And if this is in fact, and I did a little Googling, it seems to be, if this is in fact the prototype of the cowboy Western hero, then that's he has justified the novel just on that basis. He has created an amazing mythological figure um, in the American Imaginarium. And the Virginia is a compelling one. He is three-dimensional. He's believable, but he is also sort of ubermenschlich, you know. There's a Nietzschean Übermensch in there waiting to break out. And Nietzsche became very popular in the 1890s and in America. And I wouldn't be surprised if he read his Nietzsche, Mr. Wister.
Do you have any good passages that you'd like to highlight?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been talking about the Virginian the whole time, which is the the titular character, so why not? How about if we get our first view of the Virginian? Okay, so our Eastern tenderfoot comes in on the train and he sees this guy sitting on the rail of a corral. He'd been lassoing some horses or breaking horses, whatever. And Wister writes, lounging there at ease against the wall, I guess he's out of the corral now. He's against a wall, was a slim young giant. He's called a giant, but these are 19th century terms. Tim, you in this epic, you would be a giant too, because apparently this Virginian is 6 feet tall. That's it, 6 feet. Okay, good size, but not a giant. But this is how he describes him: a slim young giant, more beautiful than pictures. His broad, soft hat was pushed back. A loose knotted, dull scarlet handkerchief sagged from his throat, and one casual thumb was hooked in the cartridge belt that slanted across his hips. He had plainly come many miles from somewhere across the vast horizon, as the dust upon him showed. His boots were white with it. His overalls were gray with it. The weather-beaten bloom of his face shone through it duskily, as the ripe peaches look upon their trees in a dry season. But no dinginess of travel or shabbiness of attire could tarnish the splendor that radiated from his youth and strength. The old man upon whose temper his remarks were doing such deadly work, he had made some sarcastic remarks to an old man. The old man upon whose temper his remarks were doing such deadly work was combed and curried to a finish, a bridegroom swept and garnished, but alas for age! Had I been the bride, I should have taken the giant, dust and all. So he's describing him in very loving terms at first sight. He's a very prepossessing figure, apparently. And our narrator will continue in this attitude for the next 320 so pages, just almost a fawning admiration of him. That's a slight criticism as well of the novel. The narrator is rarely ever skeptical about the Virginian. But again, that's my own modern mentality being brought to bear here. It's fine, the narrative voice, and he comes clean. This is my hero. He's going to tell us about him. Fine. That's one passage where we meet the Virginian. So another passage might be very early on in the book where we get he is a fine writer, let me say, Wister, in this book. I much admire his prose, and his descriptive passages can be quite long-winded, but they're good. So if you're going to be long-winded, at least be good, and he is. Let me give you an example. This would be his first sight of this town that he comes into called Medicine Bow. Town, as they called it, pleased me the less the longer I saw it. But until our language stretches itself and takes in a new word of closer fit, town will have to do for the name of such a place as was Medicine Bow. Here's the description. I have seen and slept in many like it since. Scattered wide, they littered the frontier from the Columbia to the Rio Grande, from the Missouri to the Sierras. They lay stark, dotted over a planet of treeless dust, like soiled packs of cards. Each was similar to the next, as one old five-spot of clubs resembles another. Houses, empty bottles, and garbage. They were forever of the same shapeless pattern. More forlorn they were than stale bones. They seemed to have been strewn there by the wind, and to be waiting till the wind should come again and blow them away. Yet serene above their foulness swam a pure and quiet light, such as the east never sees. They might be bathing in the air of creation's first morning. Beneath sun and stars, their days and nights were immaculate and wonderful. So he's describing a little podunk Western town that isn't much to look at. It's very ephemeral, these places, little boom towns, they do a thriving business, at least the saloons and the brothels for a while. And then the boom passes and they fold up uh, the sidewalks and game over. But he describes these little, windswept, prairie towns or western towns uh, amid this magnificent landscape and this you know never-ending sky. So those are a couple examples of his descriptive powers, and I could go on, but maybe we want to go on to something else now.
Okay, what about movie versions of this? Are there movie versions or TV versions, and who plays in that, and how effective are they?
I really have been derelict here because I wanted to go and look at, some films or review some films in my mind. I didn't quite get to it. I think there was, in fact, a movie called The Virginian with Gary Cooper, I believe, 1929. This is
Yeah,
just off the top of my head. I don't know if this is quite true, folks. Please chat GBT and Google me. But I think with Gary Cooper himself in the starring role of 1929.
and I believe there
Yeah.
was a silent version of it too before that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
from what I've
this,
heard.
yeah, so this was getting a lot of play very early on, this view of the West, this view of the cowboy. And yeah, maybe here I can say something I want to get in before our hour expires. So I'll just say it now. Um, in my version of the book, and this is it right here, with a picture by Frederick Remington, who was also a friend of Wister, by the way.
Okay.
So he was well connected in this world of Western art. In this edition I have at the back, they have an appendix where they print Wister's essay, The Evolution of the Cowpuncher, which appeared in 1895, so 7 years before The Virginian was published. So we had some very firm ideas about cowboys and the West, and I kind of boil them down to two in my reading. I'll just read a short passage here from his essay. To survive in the clean cattle country requires spirit of adventure, courage, and self-sufficiency. You will not find many Poles or Huns or Russian Jews in that district. It stands as yet untainted by the benevolence of Baron Hirsch. Even in the cattle country, the respectable Swedes settle chiefly to farming and are seldom horsemen. The community of which the aristocrat appropriately made one speaks English. The Frenchman today is seen at his best inside a house. He can paint and he can play comedy, but he seldom climbs a new mountain. The Italian has forgotten Columbus and sells fruit. Among the Spaniards and the Portuguese, no Cortez or Magellan is found today. Except in Prussia, the Teuton is too often a tame, slippered animal with his pedantic mind swaddled in a dressing gown. But the Anglo-Saxon is still forever homesick for out of doors. And in the margins, I wrote, Jack London loves it. Because if any of you have seen our earlier podcasts about Jack London, that was one of his big themes, how the Anglo-Saxons were inheritors of the earth. Now, definitely there's a racial element there. As we teased out with London, it's not as bad as you think, right? Because he's distinguishing Anglo-Saxon from white in general. And in his short stories, The Anglo-Saxons up in the Klondike, particularly, are usually the fall guys. These are the bums. These are the losers. Whereas the Native Americans up there in the Yukon, particularly the women, they are the heroic figures. That right off the top, in case you didn't see our podcasts earlier. But I would say Wister is sort of the racist that people ascribe to London. uh, not within the story itself. No. Why? Well, because there's no occasion for any racial epithets or commentary because it's all whites. There's no Mexicans. They were the original cowboys. Even Wister acknowledges that in this essay, by the way. He says that the original cowboys were the vaqueros, who were quite dashing and brilliant horsemen in their own right. And that even the cowboys who came later couldn't beat their horsemanship. But there's no vaqueros in this story. There are no blacks. And as we know in the meantime, we don't see them portrayed in too many Hollywood films, at least the earlier ones. Blacks were a major element in cowboying back then. So no blacks, no Mexicans. Um, so I'm not saying he's a racist in the book, but from what I know, he was a man of his time. So, I dropped that phrase here just as sort of a reference for modern listeners, right? This is, so we're talking about racist ideas, perhaps, that the Anglo-Saxons, they are the conquerors and they are the inheritors of the earth and everything. You don't want to read too much into it, but there's definitely a racial thinking going on here. Okay, now we take it a next step. We have the Anglo-Saxons who are the cowboys, and as portrayed in film up until maybe even very recently, or still the case, he also calls them, well, I will just read now. No doubt Sir Launcelot bore himself with a grace and breeding of which our unpolished fellow of the cattle trail, the cowboy, has only the latent possibility, but in personal daring and in skill as to the horse, the knight and the cowboy are nothing but the same Saxon of different environments, the nobleman in London and the nobleman in Texas, and no hoof in Sir Thomas Malory shakes the crumbling plains with quadruped sound more valiant than the galloping that has echoed from the Rio Grande to the Bighorn Mountains. But we have no Sir Thomas Malory. Since Hawthorne, Longfellow, and Cooper were taken from us, our flippant and impoverished imagination has ceased to be national, and the rider among Indians and cattle, the frontiersman, the American who replaces Miles Standish and the Pathfinder, is now beneath the notice of polite writers. And of course, Wister with the Virginian and will intend, well, he will then in 1902 attempt to change all that, right? So he wants to bring back these Fenimore Cooper figures like the Pathfinder, as he mentions, the Deer Slayer, Hawkeye, Natty Bumppo of Leatherstocking Tales. And this is his version of an out west Natty Bumppo, the Virginian. So those are two ways to think about the Virginian here. These are two sort of subtexts to the novel. The fact that Wister is a strong proponent of Anglo-Saxon dominance, we can say, and the chivalrous ethos transposed from Europe to Wyoming. So the cowboy, in his view, and as embodied in the Virginian, is the perfect man. Really, he's a modern day knight who brings courage, fortitude, and and a great deal of skill and resourcefulness to his daily activities. And of course, he's mounted. That's important. And then he's the right racial extraction. So again, like I say, it seems like there's sort of a Nietzschean Übermensch element that is entering into our figure of the Virginian.
Yeah, we covered Joseph Conrad also at the turn of the century, I now remember. And you noted that there's not too much humor in Conrad, uh, deadly serious, except for the one tale we had on Falk, a reminiscence. There was some humor. Do you
Right.
do you detect any humorous element in the Virginian?
Well, as I said, there was that spinster hen chapter, which was interminable. So at a certain point, I wasn't laughing anymore. There's a
Right.
little bit of humor also in the beginning. There is where the preacher comes to town and everyone's sick of him. Just shut up, man. They want him to leave, and the Virginian needs a place to stay to rest his weary head because he's picking up our eastern greenhorn, and they got to spend the night before they hit the trail the next morning. And the Virginian, he uh, connives his way into sharing a bed. You do what you have to do to get a good night's sleep. So I guess they shared beds at that point in that at that in that world. And he shares this bed with this preacher fellow. Is it a preacher? No, it's not a preacher, is it? It's a businessman. I forget. But the Virginian, he scares this guy out of the bed, so the Virginian gets the bed all to himself because he wears his holster into bed with him. And the guy goes, "What's this thing you're wearing?" He says, "Well, if I wake up in the middle of the night, I sometimes have these dreams, and I think someone's trying to kill me, so I gotta, in case, I gotta feel safe with my shooting iron here in bed with me." And that spooks the businessman. And there are other little episodes, for example, where they're at a party, and all the all the homesteaders are there, the couples, men and women, and they've brought their children along, and their little babies they have put in one room, and they all have different blankets. Everyone's got their own blanket for their own baby. And then the Virginian, he just to be a mischief maker, he gets this other fellow to help him change all the blankets. Because, how are you going to recognize your kid?
Yeah.
If you will recognize them eventually when you get them home, and they do. And then there's hell to pay, and but he's the Virginian, you're gonna he's also a charming guy, right? So even when he does stuff like that, he gets away with it, not just because, you might want to think twice about challenging a guy like that, but he's actually a charming guy, and people don't take it too awfully bad. So in the beginning there is, but then the novel starts getting serious to the good, I think, because I found those episodes kind of throwaway episodes, getting us in the mood, getting us settled in this frontier world, but it didn't do much for me. And like I say, the story is about this Virginian and his two major conflicts with the school marm and Trampus, his archenemy.
So, can you trace the animosity between Trampus and the Virginian, where it starts and how it recurs throughout the novel? Are there any key episodes until their final showdown?
Yeah, there is a showdown, folks. There has to be, right? If this is a template for the American Western. I guess what you're driving at, Tim, is the poker game where Trumpus calls the Virginian a certain unpleasant name, and then the Virginian replies when you call me that smile, which I guess is a sort of famous line in the meantime. And that's where it kicks off because the Virginian has, he's countered well. And Trumpus backs down, sort of. He does, doesn't persist. He desists in berating the Virginian. So that's like a little public humiliation, and it just goes on from there. They're trading jibes. They're they're having little face-offs here and there. For example, at some point, Trampus steals uh, or appropriates the Virginian's rope, and apparently to take a cowboy's rope is the only thing worse is stealing his horse. So this was a real affront. And Wister does a very nice job of showing us the dialogue and the the back and forth between them, trying to be cool and show their mastery of the situation. Well, at the same time, you're showing the other guy that you're not scared and you're going to best him in this little match of words. And actually, Trampus, in this little encounter over the rope, he does seem to get the best of the Virginian. And the Virginian is not unstoppable, right? He can suffer little defeats. But then we come to the showdown at the end, and we can talk about that now, later, whatever you like.
I guess now would be fine.
Yeah. Well, what happens is that the the school marm, Molly Wood, she finally does fall for the Virginian, and they're set to be married. And they go into town, and while going into town, Trampus gallops past them, and all right, well, here he is. Right when they're ready to tie the knot, this this thorn in the side of the Virginian is again manifesting. Well, so they're going into town. They're going to get married the next day at the Justice of the Peace. And the Virginian goes into the saloon, with his buddies. They have a few drinks, right? Just before he enters the state of matrimony. And who barges in but Trumpus, and he's drunk. And he starts insulting the Virginian. He fires a shot, I think. It's not totally clear, but he seems to fire a shot that goes into the ceiling of the saloon. He throws something, I forget what it is, that goes past the head of the Virginian and breaks the window of the saloon. He's hurling all kinds of epithets and insults, and the Virginian's very cool. He's just, sitting there and, saying, "You sure you want to go this route? You sure?" And at one point, then Trampus says, "I'm sure, and in fact, I know where you want to go. You want to go out of town by sundown." All right. So not high noon, but it's very high noonish, except that Gary Cooper and Grace Kelly get married before the showdown. All right. In this one, they will be getting married after the showdown if the Virginian lives. Well, I talked about that the dual rivalries, the dual conflicts that the Virginian has throughout the novel. He has the one with Trumpus, obviously, and he has the other one with Molly Wood, who has been resisting his advances over the years, it seems. But now she has finally assented to marry him. Well, just at the moment where they are about to enter upon wedded bliss, this Trampus guy now comes into the picture, And the Virginian, he's torn. What's he going to do? Because he knows that Molly is not going to want any kind of bloodshed. She said she'll tell him, look, let's just get out of here. Uh, you have your whole life in front of you with me. Don't you love me? Do you love yourself so much that you're going to do this thing? Have a showdown with Trumpus. Uh, we know you're courageous. You have nothing to prove to anyone. And he says, and she continues on, and why should other people's opinions have any bearing on what you think about yourself or what you do? Because the Virginian says, well, if I walk away from this, I can't show my face in these parts ever again. And he says, and then she replies, well, who cares about that? And he said, well, yeah, I don't care about that because the one person I love most of all in this world, I don't care what she says. I'm going to go out and I'm going to face this guy, right? So it's not really an inner struggle of the Virginians. He's decided, this is his second nature. He's going to defend his honor. But it's more of a conflict he has with his uh, bride to be, right? Because then at the moment where he says, "Well, I'm going," he says, "Well, if you go, I won't be here when you return." And he knows that she's serious because she's a serious woman. And so he leaves. The showdown takes place. It's nicely done, I think, because it's very elusive, the showdown. At one point, the Virginian feels something, go by his sleeve. It's apparently a bullet. And then you know, all of a sudden, two gunshots go off. He looks up. Trampus is on the ground. He has been struck twice by the Virginian's bullets. Showdown's over. The Virginian wins, and he has witnesses, so he's not going to be pulled up before a court of law. Trampus shot first. And then the Virginian goes back and, well, it happens so quick that Molly didn't have time not to be there. So she's still there in the hotel room. And because he has survived, and and this is the implication that Wister wants us to feel, because he really did show he was a man, and that's what women really want deep down, even though they'll say something different. She is, she falls into his arms. They get married the next day and they live happily ever after. And that is basically the novel.
There's a couple chapters about the little house he builds for her out in nature, kind of as a coda.
Yeah, but that's uninteresting for me. See, I think the showdown is where it peaks, and then it's just anticlimax actually for
It
me.
is a big anticlimax there.
Just go riding off into the sunset, with your bride, and like Gary Cooper does with Grace Kelly. I thought Fred Zinnemann did a little bit better than Owen Wister in that regard.
There you go. Okay. And you said when we were talking about how we would address this novel, you might talk about the history of the Western novel in general, like a little survey of where it went after the Virginian. And you can invoke movies as well because they
Well,
are
I
text.
must say I'm really unqualified to do that, Tim. I might have said that. Yes, indeed. Yes, I think I did, in fact. But I think what I was referring to was Shane, because that's a novel I have read. And that's by Jack Schaefer, and of course the movie's based on it. The book's very good, but this is one instance I think where the movie improved on the book. Shane is in my top three films of all time. Also, it's Woody Allen's favorite film too, just to show you the universal quality of it that a guy from New York can appreciate Shane.
Hmm.
Uh, the book is fine, and the movie is based pretty closely on it. But that would be the other classic uh, showdown film, right? And it has a similar ending with respect to the love interest. Now, Shane is with a family, and there's a son. We see the action through the son's eyes, Joey. And so it's basically it's similar in the same way as Wister puts the action of the Virginian through the eyes of this tenderfoot Easterner who idolizes the Virginian. Well, it's the same thing. This is a little boy, he idolizes Shane. And uh, the love interest aspect is that Shane, we all know the story. He's a gunslinger. He's trying to leave his past behind, hang his holster up on a nail, and he comes into the valley. It's in Wyoming, by the way. That's another commonality. We see in the opening shot the Grand Tetons in the background, which is where some of the action in the Virginian takes place in the Grand Tetons themselves. And uh, Shane gets together with this homesteading family. They're at war with the local rancher. He wants all their land, he wants all their water. And Shane takes the side of the homesteaders, and the wife of the husband, mother of little Joey, she uh, takes a hankering to Shane, and Shane to her. Nothing happens. It's very clean, almost puritanical. I think the most that they do is they shake hands before they part ways. Shane goes off to the saloon for the showdown and everything. But there's that too, right?
Yeah.
That there's this love interest that the hero is leaving behind to do what a man has to do, right? And in fact, it's sort of on the nose, some of the narration in the Virginian, because he says that in words more or less, mostly more. Man's got to do what a man's got to do. I could find the passage if you like. Uh, there's yeah, um, yeah, there's this section here where he says, yeah, he says, can't you see? He's talking to Molly, the Virginian. Can't you see how it must be about a man? Right. I'm laughing not because I'm trying to belittle the sentiment, but there's a lot of that, this there's a lot of iterations of this sentiment and the very words, you have to be a man, you got to be a man. Fine, yeah. But I think he hits it on the nose a little bit too often. And that's that's the thing that those are the things that that the novel shares with the movie Shane. And of course, Shane wins out in the final duel, and he goes riding off into the sunset, which doesn't necessarily happen here. Again, we follow the life of the Virginian. He becomes later becomes a partner in the ranch of his employer, and then he becomes a coal magnate, and becomes quite a wealthy figure in the region. So it's not a tragic ending at all, like it is with Shane, because Shane, he's a tragic figure. He couldn't hang up his holster. He got called back into the fray, and he kills three people at the end, actually. Virginian just kills one. just goes on. And he goes off. He can't live a life of peace and tranquility. He is subject to his past, and he goes off right into the sunset. He's wounded. Maybe he'll die. We don't know. But that's not the Virginian. It's a heroic ending and a happy ending too.
Okay. All right. I have a I have a version of the book right here with illustrations by Tom Ross. Did you get the one with illustrations in there?
No, no. As I said, this one right here. It's the Oxford version. No
Oh, okay.
illustrations.
No illustrations. Okay. I was wondering if there was anything to say about those. Let's see. Well, just very simple sketches here. Nothing major.
No. Well,
Uh,
what I can say, yeah,
at the head of the chapter, they would have a little illustration every now and then.
yeah, it's nice.
Yeah,
Um,
not a big deal.
per the theme of chivalry,
Yeah.
uh, it extends to romance. And in one of the meetings where he's trying to woo her between the Virginian and Molly Wood, there's this little episode. He turned and looked at her so that she could not meet his glance. Bless your heart, said he. Will you give me one of those flowers? Oh, certainly, she said. I'm always so glad when people like them. They're pretty near the color of your eyes, he said. Never mind my eyes. Can't help it, ma'am. Not since South Fork. He put the flower in the leather band of his hat and rode away on his Monte horse. Miss Wood lingered a moment, then made some steps toward her gate, from which he could still be seen, and then, with something like a toss of the head, she went in and shut her door. Later in the day, the Virginian met Mr. McLean, who looked at his hat and innocently quoted, My Lulu picked a daisy. Don't you, Lynn? Said the Southerner. Then I won't, said Lynn. Thus, for this occasion, did the Virginian part from his lady. So, his lady, with a little um, token of her affection, which is what knights would do before they went into the lists. I don't know if it was a flower, but they had some little token. I think it was a handkerchief or something from their lady love, and they would wear that in the tournament. So little touches like that, which prove then Wister's uh, own view of the cowboy as being a chivalrous figure, not only uh, uh, in the masculine realm, that is to say, in dealings with other men, but in the feminine realm.
And I also noticed a chapter or two as kind of a paean to democracy. I'm sure Teddy Roosevelt liked those chapters where he talks about democracy is the great form of aristocracy
Right.
because people can get as high as they want in a free democracy.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that caught my eye too, Tim. Glad you saw it the same way. Yeah, he kind of flips the Declaration of Independence, right? Because we all know that phrase, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among those being uh,
life,
what are
liberty,
those? You
life,
know the
liberty, and
thing. I'm doing my President Biden. Yeah, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But the line about equality, all men are created equal, um, Wister flips it. He says, it was through the Declaration of Independence that we Americans acknowledged the eternal inequality of man. For by it we abolished a cut and dried aristocracy. We had seen little men artificially held up in high places, and great men artificially held down in low places, and our own justice-loving hearts abhorred this violence to human nature. Therefore, we decreed that every man should thenceforth have equal liberty to find his own level. By this very decree, we acknowledged and gave freedom to true aristocracy, saying, let the best man win, whoever he is. Let the best man win. That is America's word. That is true democracy. And true democracy and true aristocracy are one and the same thing. If anybody cannot see this, so much the worse for his eyesight. So he's equating paradoxically aristocracy with democracy, and those two are usually mutually exclusive terms, at least from a political science standpoint.
Right.
And the frontier is this field of fair play where democracy can produce the aristocrats. And where it's very clear who those aristocrats are in his world, it's the cowboy, our chivalrous knights.
All right. That seems to be a nice way of summing it up. And as we come to the conclusion here after about an hour, well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all your insights. And you and I will have to decide what we'll do next time
Yeah.
at another time.
Well, what might be a good one, I was thinking about that, and it wouldn't take up too much of our reading time, is to read Stephen Crane's The Bride Comes to Yellow Sky, I think is the title,
Yeah, that's right.
and The Blue Hotel. And those are two kind of anti-Virginian tales, right?
Hmm.
And we could read, you could read, we could read those in a couple hours and then we got it, right? And then but I think there's lots of material there as a nice contrast with the Virginian.
Okay.
And Crane is writing at the exact same time as Wister, recall, in the 1890s, same time. He
Contemporaries.
dies in 1900, Crane. So that might be a nice one. And I have one last thing. This book, first of all, I want to make clear that I enjoyed it. It's an accomplished piece of writing, and I recommend it. But what's best about it, I think, is that as I was reading it, and again, I'd forgotten it from my first read of 30 years ago, I recognized scenes, I recognized figures, I recognized dialogue, I recognized conflicts. That is to say, Wister, he created a genre that has carried through to the present day. As far as I know, I'm not a big Western reader, but just by virtue of the films, he
Yeah.
created a whole world that was just waiting to be birthed. And that's my highest compliment. When you can create an image, when you can create a mythology like that, wow. I mean, you can't ask any more of a writer. And so hats off to Mr. Wister. And yeah, I'm a bit envious because that is really a creative act in the truest sense.
Okay, Kevin, thanks you very much. And we'll see you next time, hopefully with some Stephen Crane.
Great. We ended right at an hour. Beautiful.
Correct. Let me see here if I can get to the ending. Yes.